through a legal option. It is a peaceful option. It is a civilized option. It is an option that anyone who upholds the law should not be afraid of. And it is an option that we are seeking in order to seek justice for all the victims that have been killed by Israel, the occupying power.
I think that the whole region, as we know, is burning because of many conflicts. What puts out these conflicts is solving the Palestinian-Israeli cause, according to the international law. We are not asking for more, but we will not accept with less than that. Tonight we have 20 agreements that we will sign, but it is our right to sign all the agreements with the international organizations, and this will come later.
We expect the International Criminal Court to summarily dismiss the Palestinian Authority's duplicitous application, because the Palestinian Authority is not a state. It is an entity that is allied with a terrorist organization, Hamas.
Well, the Israelis have frozen Palestinian tax revenues in response to a decision by the Palestinian Authority to formally apply for membership at the International Criminal Court. Now, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas appears not to be discouraged by any of this. He's vowing to table another UN resolution following last week's failed bid for statehood at the UN Security Council. Well, to discuss where the Palestinians go from here, let's turn to our guests for the evening. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Nabil Khalil. He's a political analyst. Welcome back to the show, Doctor. We also have freelance journalist TK Malloy. Always good to have you on, TK. Likewise. Nabil, let's begin with you here. Let's start with that Palestinian bid for the ICC. Do you think we're going to see any Israeli officials prosecuted for war crimes as a result of this?
I think it's a long journey toward getting any Israelis to the criminal court, International Criminal Court.
So is it another PR stunt, perhaps, on the part of the Palestinian Authority, then?
Of course, they have to go through a huge way to get these people to court. We know they are criminals. We could prosecute them from a long time ago. I think it's only a way of pressuring the Israelis to get back to the table and go for more negotiation. That's the style, the way of the authority, the Palestinian Authority.
But it's certainly not doing that, is it, TK? Why do you think the Israelis are so afraid of the Palestinians joining the ICC?
One, I do think it's more than a PR stunt. I agree with Nabil that while it's going to take a long time, that the process might have a degree of futility, but I think it sets a moral basis for a Palestinian state to at least present these crimes or alleged crimes to the world, and thus have a world dialogue and discussion on them. Now, of course,
you both seem to have a very optimistic view about this, but look at these look at these statistics. I mean, during the last week of 2014, the Israelis killed one Palestinian boy. They injured a total of 40 people, 24 of them children. This was after the Palestinian Authority had already said it was going to go to the ICC. The Israelis still continued committing human rights abuse.
To address your question is how this will end, I was going to get around to that, is how it will curb Israeli behavior, whether it will bring people back to the table. Israel is very afraid of this for those obvious reasons. Now, it will bring, as I was saying, is this lends a greater, more authority to a Palestinian state, and it lends transparency to the process, where at least these actions by the state of Israel then come before the world. Now, Israel, and in terms of its U.S. backing, is for now, first let's address Israel, is absolutely they do not want to see a unilateral move by the Palestinian Authority towards statehood. It of course wrecks any kind of Israeli security and other plans, growth plans, hegemonistic plans, and this is just not something they have, whether they have been temporizing or stalling in negotiations, they have been doing everything to prevent it for some time. It is simply not on the map with them, no matter how much they say it is. But to me, taking a page out of diplomacy, geopolitics, is the Palestinians have every right to apply for membership in the ICC. For Netanyahu to suggest that they are an entity, well, that works both ways, as many people term Israel an entity as well.
Well, that's the big question now. How far will the Israelis go in order to prevent this, Nabil? Because we do know that they froze Palestinian tax revenues there. Do you think that they are willing to go as far as perhaps to engineer the collapse of the Palestinian Authority in order to prevent this ICC membership?
It's not convenient for the Israeli to engineer the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. They are doing them a favor by being there, by holding the Oslo Agreement, which brings everything in favor of Israel. They are there to keep the Paris agreements, which are the economical ties that ties Palestinians to the Israelis. That's one of the reasons that we don't see the third Intifada in Palestine. So
because Mahmoud Abbas and his people are preventing one from taking
are
place.
working on this. Like even what they see as a dangerous attitude of Abbas to go to United Nations to ask for a membership of recognition of United Nations of the Security Council. It's actually not threatening at the long term for Israel, and despite of this, even if Palestinians go to ICC, it's not the only way that they can do it. Today, Palestine has solidarity groups all over the world. They could use it if they really wish to do, but the group of Mahmoud Abbas, the councillors, the people who are working on the Palestinian Authority are not willing to do enough, not only in the international arena like we see in the ICC or in the United Nations Security Council, but yes, you should go to the ground, to the bases. Now Palestine has solidarity all over the world. It's in Europe on the level of on a popular level, and parties of South America, even in groups of North American people, in Africa, in Asia. So if they are willing to do this work, they have to go to work hard on it, and they have to go to these people to work with them.
TK, Washington also condemned that ICC application by
Yes.
the Palestinians. Do you think that Mahmoud Abbas is putting the Palestinians on a diplomatic collision course, if we can call it that, with Washington as a result of these moves?
I'm going to say no. While the formal policy of the United States was to vote against such a move by the Palestinians for a variety of reasons, at the same time they stated that a tenet of U.S. policy was that Israel had to make a return of tax monies to the Palestinians. Now, this is not necessarily a double message, but while they are saying that they stand against the ICC membership, or reversely, they stand with Israel against ICC membership of the Palestinians, they're suggesting that the Palestinian can't make some of these kind of petty reprisal moves of holding back money. In discussions before with my colleague, he made the suggestion, which I think is spot on, that the U.S. wants money to be returned to the Palestinian Authority because it acts as a steam release. Now, the Israelis, as they often do in their policies of reprisal and repression, are acting against their own interests. They hold back money, they're going to end up with an intifada and people on the streets.
Okay, but we've seen condemnation of this tax revenue freeze. We've seen it from the EU Foreign Policy Chief yesterday, Nabil, condemning the move. But are we likely to see anything more than that? Are we likely to see more action on the part of the international community to perhaps cut trade links with the Israelis? The Europeans have in the past suggested sanctions against companies that do business with illegal Israeli settlements.
This is hypocritical attitude of the European countries. The Israelis did this before, several times, and they end up giving this money back to the authority, because this is not the authority money, it's the money of those who work for the authority to keep peace on the West Bank and in the territory controlled by the Palestinian Authority. So therefore, it's not convenient for Israel even to keep this. It's not real money, it's exchange money. It's only $100 million. We are talking about a few money that might last in Palestine, in the West Bank and in the territory occupied or taken by the authority no more than a couple of months. So yes, it will create a situation in the international arena that this is the main subject. The atrocity that Israelis are making against Palestinians in the West Bank and even in the territory occupied in 1948 is becoming nothing. Now this is the main subject. It's calling the attention of all the world about the tax return money, and let's help the Palestinians, show the Palestinians that we are with you. But if we are talking about Palestinians going to the ICC or asking the people to boycott Israel as they did against the South African apartheid, this is a big stone that we should ask Palestinians to stop doing it. Otherwise, we will ask the Israeli not to give this money back to the Palestinians, and we will ask the American not to give the other few $300 or $400 million a year to Palestinians to pay their salaries. And it doesn't matter who filled this gap. Actually, we do not need, Palestinians do not need this real money. I mean, this is not real money to stand, say, an economy for Palestinians, a lasting economy. It's not something that you can rely on to create a basis for the lasting economy in Palestine. The situation is that this is only to pay salaries and to pay some other services. Meanwhile, Israel is taking settlers to the West Bank and taking more territory and taking advantage of the time being to take the Holy Land of Palestinians.
So basically, it reduces the cost of the Israeli occupation. TK, is that more or less it?
A quick answer to that is yes. Some of this stymies me in terms of the Israeli moves are some ways playing to the house. If they're playing to their own constituencies, they're very ham-handed in terms of how they appear to the international community, particularly in the face of that the Israelis don't lack political sophistication, but between the tax monies, the rhetoric that they're using in speeches and so forth.
There is an election coming up, of course.
Yes, that's what I was saying. That's playing to the house is the Likud, who was considered conservative right-wing and defines itself as such in its rhetoric, is being outpaced by Israeli Home, the settler movement, which is even more right-wing. There's a big flux in Israeli politics right now. Israel, by no means, is a one-politics state. There's a lot of discussion and debate within the body politic there. There is the Labor Party, and there's an Israeli left and right, each with different motivations. But as far as yes, the money, the ICC, and other things, is Israel in the end is bringing themselves. If one asks the question, now it's not even so much the ICC, war crimes, this is to lend some balance, as both sides could be accused of war crimes. We can debate forever who is the worst. I think.
Oh, come on, it's no debate.
It's my job to lend some balance.
10,000 Palestinian people.
I was going to finish up.
The balance between the victims and the
casualty total speaks for itself with the Hamas war. What my only counterpoint, so we don't completely go off on a hand-holding session with the Palestinians, is there's a large amount of rockets launched by the Hamas into Palestinian territory.
People they kill.
Let me finish up.
It's firework.
Yeah, it's
rockets.
whether these things are toys or not is it doesn't, as I said, the Israelis don't serve themselves well in some of their foreign policy. Hamas does not serve itself well, or the Palestinian cause.
Okay, Tiki, let me stop you right there, because I do want to talk about Hamas in a moment. But first, I read this article by Robert Fisk titled, "When Will the Palestinians Learn that Turning to the International Law Isn't the Answer? Just Ask America and Israel." That speaks volume.
Yes, he just came out with that recently.
Yeah, it was for The Independent.
The Independent, all right. I came across that. Could you read me the headline again of that?
Yeah, sure. When will the Palestinians learn turning to international law isn't the answer? Just ask America and Israel. The point being, of course, that every time that the Palestinians have tried to go the way of international law, there always seem to be these players in the international arena that would say, well, the Israelis have committed these horrible atrocities, but let's not talk about that now for the sake of the two-state solution or for the sake of these next round of peace talks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, all right, thank you. I just needed a reminder on the headline for a second where Fisk was going. Mr. Fisk is a wonderful writer, but his tour de horizons are more comprehensive than my own sometimes. I disagree with his thesis on this. Again, is by joining the ICC is perhaps previously it was and Palestine has themselves as Fatah Abbas has waited for such a move. When they pushed for it before, they delayed at U.S. suggestion, but I think they were almost forced into it given the political intransigence of their opposite number, the Israelis. It's not, again, so much as war crimes are important, and I do agree that the balance is not necessarily equal whatsoever. But it's not just the ICC. The importance here is gaining recognition in multilateral bodies, not only the ICC, but other multilateral bodies that lend, if you will, a moral authority to Palestinian statehood. And such a move, in my mind, is rational, reasonable, and is I think, something that is being recognized in consensus as a right of the Palestinians.
Nabil, yeah, go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, it's really amazing. How can you compare the cruelty of an assassin or criminal like Israel with the victims of Palestinians that had been more than 70 years? We're talking about 1948 when the Jewish were minority and they took most of the land of Palestinians, and they pushed more than 5 million Palestinians out of their land. How can you compare this with the victims? I mean, victimized had been the Palestinians since 1947.
I'm not here tonight to shill for Israel by any means, but we should...
We are talking about criminality that it's not only asking people to get out of their land and not permitting them to get back the right of return. It's all the contrary. They're bringing more Jewish to the land of Palestinians. It's all the contrary. They are taking more lands in West Bank. Even if we are talking about two states, where the two states can be. Now, we are talking about frontiers of 1967, we have now 600,000, more than 600,000.
The 67 borders have long since been violated by the settlers. Would they take
these 600,000 to the Green Line? It's not logic. So we are talking about some illogical thing. It's nonsense. It's one state where Palestinians can be like Israelis, say, like Jewish, one state for every citizen. If we are talking about this in less than 1 decade, you can't talk about state for Jewish.
You've jumped several chess moves ahead of me there, Professor. I happen to think myself is a one-state solution is the obvious solution. If anything, again, as I was saying earlier, the Israelis have shot themselves in the foot with the settler movement. They've balkanized the West Bank so much. My point was actually a rather specific one, and when it gets into accusations of war crimes, is the equitability of it isn't even the question. It's not a child's sandbox game of what's fair and what isn't, who did more to whom.
It's that the ICC bid is a double-edged sword. It can also affect
Israel has been constantly has been attacked since partition. They have fought back. It's a national security state, and how they have evolved is in an unfortunate way into an apartheid hegemonistic state. This is something they must take responsibility for. But at the same time, people can't go on launching rockets, suicide bombing, and so forth. Israel by no means has any kind of moral authority for stomping into Hamas and flattening it. It was appalling, the civilian death total. The comparisons were beyond odious in terms of how many Israelis died versus how many Palestinians. And at this point, as various elements of the Likud party were pushing Netanyahu to go in even heavier. Now, what they meant by that, I'm not too certain. What would have been left is, at some point, Israel...
We know what's left. I mean, we know what's in the hand of Netanyahu to do more. He can shell more rockets. He can kill another...
He can reoccupy Gaza again.
Yeah, another 600 kids in Gaza and in West Bank. We see the articles that the fascist orientation of the Israeli society that's going toward it. And we know that they did it before in 1947. They did it in 1967. They did it all along. If you take the reality of Palestine since then, we see that this is not only apartheid, it's criminals committing against Palestinians, and it's everyday, daily basis doing it against Palestinians. Occupying the territory and taking people. We have 6,000 prisoners in Israeli prisoners. Just for what?
My Latin is always a bit stilted. Is casus belli, the original cause, is the al-Nakba, the catastrophe, is a horrible thing, of course. And as I mentioned before, it puts things on the same moral scale as the Holocaust. The Israelis no longer, in my mind, get a free pass on this issue whatsoever. The handling of the creation of the State of Israel, what was done with the Palestinian people, is all a great tragedy, as is encompassed with the name, the catastrophe. It must be mentioned, though, as I'm not necessarily in favor. I, of course, was not born then, but my reading of history, and this gets back to a one-state solution, is at the time of the partition, this was what the realpolitik was, is an equitable splitting of what was then Palestine. It's still Palestine. And at this point, now, of course, there had been objections to this before the vote by the UN, by the Arab states, but then 5 Arab states declared war against Israel. Perhaps unfortunate for them. Perhaps unfortunate for them
is
is they.
reality. I mean,
When you read
entirely
this,
it's only in the bibliography and in the libraries of Israel. This is Israeli history. Reality is completely different. I mean.
Are you suggesting that Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Egypt did not attack it?
There were no Arab states at the time. There were no. It were people who are trying to get their independence. They had no army, no real stuff. And
obviously, they were. What is a matter of fact, and this is maybe perhaps too bad for the parties involved, for the Palestinian and Arab parties involved, is they were beaten. To me, it's rather amazing, is given that this was just a group of Zionists or war outnumbered, perhaps by combatants, is. These things get into, as we were discussing before, I don't buy into the creation myth or legends of the creation of Israel whatsoever, but it has not been a one-sided affair of simple Israel hegemony all along. The idea...
Genocide attitude was one side only. It was Israeli since the foundation of this state. As far as these people believe in the Zionism, the differentiation between people by ethnical group, by religious group, just state for Jewish, this is going worse and worse, and it's killing civilians, even among
I couldn't agree more. Now, a modern state, as we were discussing, a one-state solution, in my mind, involves universal suffrage, equal rights to all religions, and not a one. We won't even say a one religious state. Allow me to finish. They would not. They won't allow a one ethnic state, such as Israel, to say we are a Jewish state. There's nothing comparable really like this in the modern world. Now, an evolved state, we won't use Israel. An evolved Palestinian one-state solution would involve a modern state of universal suffrage, equal rights, and would not resemble the pleasant political entity. This is, to me, a possible solution.
How can this idea be possible if the Israelis are allowing Jewish to come back under the what they call the
law of return?
Yeah, and then they not allowing 5 million Palestinians that they have rights to go back, and they still have the keys of their ancestors and their fathers. How can we deal with this?
Okay, gentlemen, let's go back a little bit to the current state of affairs. We have these last couple of weeks, DK, if they have raised a fundamental question, not just in Palestinian society, but in Arab society as a whole, is that has armed resistance launched by Palestinian groups like Hamas been more effective in dealing with this Israeli occupation that you're talking about than decades of negotiations by the Palestinian Authority and the PLO?
It's been a good question. A quick answer is I'm going to say no. Is the political result, the military result was forgiven, as we said, and inherent was that the military crimes committed against those in Gaza. I have spent a long time in Gaza, and in all fairness, it's like the world's largest penitentiary. Now, for those who have spent time in the occupied territories, I would, for the record, like to state in my own view, is that there's a great deal of repression of the Palestinian people, a great deal of apartheid and racism. This is obvious. Gaza is not a pleasant place, and it has been made so by the State of Israel.
But this is the only way that Palestinian people can keep their lands. We can discuss the two solution. I mean,
they had Gaza returned to them part and parcel. How many years ago?
That's inaccurate. That's inaccurate, though. I mean, let's agree that there is a blockade of Gaza. Aerial sea that
let's say this negates return. Israel made a bargain and removed the settlements.
One single inch from Gaza, the Israelis couldn't take. Yet they are taking kilometers and kilometers of the ground of West Bank. Why? Because there are somebody who is negotiating today, and while they are negotiating, they are taking land and bringing settlers to these lands. They bring 600 settlers to West Bank. They couldn't bring one settler to Gaza. While they were negotiating after Oslo, they made many settlements.
Believe me, Professor, there is a settler in Israel who would settle anywhere.
Of the Palestinian resistance.
They would love to settle Gaza as well. There was a removal of them. I'm not saying this was a great moral success for the Israelis, but
no, it's a great failure actually.
Is the result for them is what they consider sort of Hamas
failure for Israel. While there are negotiations, there's success for Israel. That's what happened in West Bank. They took land, they bring settlers, they took part of Jerusalem because we are negotiating. While they were negotiating in Gaza, they made settlers. While they had resistance, then they had to withdraw all the settlers and liberate every inch of Gaza.
South Lebanon is a perfect example of that, TK, wouldn't you say?
There we go. And it's international right guarantees.
It took 20 years for the resistance to drive
them
out.
It's taken 21 years for negotiations since
I have no notion that the Israelis should be in any fashion be able to control the West Bank or Gaza. For the record, is now I said is the Hamas's struggle. Now, if you will. Idealistically, the right of struggling, of freedom fighting, is something that is inherent, as I would believe, almost a human right. So in that way, just the mere act of struggling against your oppressors is a success. Just to say, no, I will not stand this anymore.
Yeah.
And to bring that to worldview, that you are taking that stance. The larger implications, though, is it's a question of how Hamas will be perceived in the world. Now, Israel, of course, has its own. It looks even more onerous. And by its actions, it becomes a pariah state. Let not Palestinians make the same mistake of looking like pariahs as well. Now, of course, there's a great deal. This is in some ways a political rivalry.
Palestinians are under occupation, and they have the right to resist. It's guaranteed.
They have a right to resist, but in terms of, does that include suicide bombing of civilian buses?
What's suicide bombing? You're talking about years, decades ago. Now there are resistance to protect Palestinian territory. If you have to do this, people are struggling now in West Bank and in Jerusalem with knives against what? What Israel has. They have every kind of killing armaments. And the Palestinian
so a solution to the end logic of your point would be to arm the Palestinians with equally sophisticated weapons.
Well,
let the Palestinians go one better than the Israelis and show a face of, say, Nelson Mandela.
But that's not working. That's not working. TK, let's be realistic. That isn't working, is it?
Armed struggle is a very precarious move. Now, again, as I said, there is to me a right to, and in some ways it does show the world a message. The Israelis, of course, are worried about another intifada, but perhaps something like that. Every year, there's a large march on the borders of Israel by people who usually...
Where people get shot.
I was about to say, the net effect of that is a rather tragic one if they end up 6 feet under the deserts of the border of Israel. And I don't want to see these things happen, is people can make these heroic stands against Israel. I think there's another way around, and it has nothing to do with what the Israelis deserve or not, but it's just they can threaten violence. More so, as I said, the Israelis are so ham-handed sometimes, and they've reached a kind of point of no return in terms of racism, is they're quickly becoming a world pariah on their own bat. Let them, if you will, create the own rope to hang themselves with.
Nabil, we do know that relations between Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas can hardly be considered, fruitful. Do you think that this ICC bid undermines Hamas as well to a degree? Everything that TK has said, of course, points in that direction.
This is a turning point for Israelis. If we really can bring them to ICC, I don't believe so. Despite of this, I can bet on you on this. If Israel can bring Hamas or any leader who harm civilians in the Palestinian territory occupied in 1948, this is no comparison situation. Despite of your question about the ICC, I think that the world should go and the Palestinian Authority should go other ways. Like we should talk to Israel as an apartheid state. Like they are trying Palestinians as in 1948 territory as second citizen. They have no rights as Israeli citizen. And they are treating Palestinians in West Bank, because Palestinians in West Bank has no armament to defend themselves. They have no resistance as they have in Gaza. They defend themselves in Gaza, whether with Hamas or any other groups, and they have the right to do it. The international laws guarantees this, because they don't have this possibility to defend themselves.
This is a great fear. As far back in the 90s, some Israeli politicians pointed that the state of Israel was drifting to the point of becoming, because South Africa was on the hot seat then, that they were worried that they themselves would find themselves under similar scrutiny. That has happened now. Now, they've been making these apartheid violations for years. You're right. What I'm suggesting is that Hamas, now I know this might sound like a bit of a slogan, but they might get more with a PR agency than with a gun. If they bring to light, if they publicize more and advertise the kind of treatment they're getting, if they bring world opinion on their side. Now, this was done with the South African boycott.
There is no way that Israel can bring public opinion on their side, because
they've got a great deal already.
Because Palestinians are resisting these colonizations. This is the last territory occupied by any colonized country. This is the only place that is the colonization exists. Israel should withdraw from territory occupied in 1967. Israel should give back the land that they took for settlers. Israel should give back the East Jerusalem, the whole East Jerusalem. They should get people out of prison. They should not keep asking people to go out of Israel.
This is a good grocery list of commands. I completely agree with you. But what would the end result be?
It is a strategy that the Palestinian Authority, if we're talking about the difference between Hamas and, the resistance in Gaza,
right,
and the Palestinian Authority, this is a strategy that Mahmoud Abbas and his people should work on. They should gather the real solidarity with people. We do not go, if you wish, we don't need to go to United Nations to get a miserable statement. We should go to the people who are in solidarity with Palestine, with the Palestinian cause,
this I entirely agree with.
And ask them to boycott Israel.
Yes, this is what I'm getting at. A boycott is doing better with PR and advertising than with a gun. Is the South African economic boycott did a great deal of good, if not purely on economic grounds of making it appear as a pariah state. Not appear, it was a pariah state. Israel has crossed that line as well. To me, it is deserving of such a measure, and there is popular support for this increasing, but it is a matter of education, media awareness, and putting this message out on the part of the Palestinians.
So why do you think the Palestinian Authority went to the Security Council with this resolution?
No, again,
we all knew that this wasn't going to pass, so why undertake this?
It's important to see, when we talk about the right to struggle, it's important just to take these actions, even just symbolic, but in the case of the ICC, they are going to be granted membership as of April 1. This has been a success in my mind for the Palestinians. They have been, as I said, it's not even the question so much joining multilateral bodies, which paves the way for recognition, as they began to diplomatically liaise with colleagues in multilateral bodies. They become like onto a state.
In spite of what you're saying, that this might be a success for the Palestinians, I would say
a partial success.
It is a failure for the Palestinian Authority, totally failure. They had been negotiating for 23 years since 1993, and now they know that they will not get anywhere despite of what they have, the concessions that they give, all the concessions that they give to Israel, and they are not getting anywhere with it. So they go to United Nations and they make this huge show to have another failure, because they know that if they do not have the consents of United States, and United States did made 43 vetoes since 1972 against the Palestinians and for Israel. They use 43 times the veto.
Which
in
they didn't,
favor
which they
and
didn't,
Israel.
which they didn't even need at this UN Security Council vote.
Especially in this case, they do not need it because actually it was
It
8
failed to get 9 votes.
to get the 9 votes. So actually, they did not need to use it, but they just want to show that we are backing Israel.com. And this is the situation. This is really...
TK, you're talking about boycotting. There is the boycott BDS movement that is proven
Yes, that's what I'm referencing. And
it's proven relatively effective, but the Palestinian Authority has chosen not to pursue that avenue. And as a matter of fact, they have condemned it in many respects.
To me, I would recommend that they do pursue it. I was not familiar with the condemnation of it. To me, this is a way to go, and it'll lend weight to the Palestinian cause, and more so when you have an intransigent group such as the Israelis. If economics is going to be the stick you want to use, other than other types of devices, beating them with the pocketbook is going to get a lot further than anything else. You can tighten this. Israel is a small state. It has a large economic entanglement around the world. It's a global exporting and importing state, great deal of IT knowledge and so forth. And
a great deal of what?
IT knowledge. This is some of what they're superlative.
It's a great deal of armaments that they sell everywhere. The last
As well.
They sold to Rwanda
underlying armaments is IT.
To kill the Tutsi and to make the
Colombian
kill.
And Rwanda abstained at the UN Security Council.
I'm not praising Israeli economic prowess.
A great deal of agreements they have. This is a commercial deal. This is the industry, armament industry, to make people kill each other. That's the morality of Israel.
They're selling natural gas to Egypt. They're building a great pipeline.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is economics.
They are selling gas to Egypt and buying from Egypt gas for $5.
Economics is the underpinning of a lot of power in the world. Now, I wasn't even talking about their prowess. What I was suggesting is that they don't have, if you will, a self-sufficient base. Their existence is dependent on world trade, selling their services, etc. And if there's a stranglehold put on this, it will bring them to bay.
Okay, Nabil, you're against diplomacy or against the UN Security Council resolution?
I'm not against.
Okay, what's next? Just what's next? Okay, so what's next for the Palestinians? What's the solution here? Where do they go? How do they do it?
We have 1-8-1 solution, dividing Palestine in 2 states. Israel did not respect it. We have 2-4-2 resolution to ask Israel to withdraw from the land that they occupied in 1967. They never respected. We have the resolution 194 to ask Israel to permit the Palestinians who left, who was obliged to leave their home, to get back to their home. No acceptance and no respect for this resolution. Why we go again to the United Nations to get another resolution that Israel is not going to respect? This is the real situation. If we are talking about the way we can deal with Israel, it's one way. We fight for our rights. People in Palestine have the right to fight for their rights, and it's guaranteed by international laws. People have to, the Palestinian Authority have to go and collect these credits of solidarity all over the world and work on it. How can you leave this solidarity just like that, instead of going to United Nations and make
not the United Nations? I couldn't agree. You multilaterally.
This is the real solution. Let the people fight for their rights. The Palestinian Authority is not letting them to do it. Why? Because they are respecting the agreement of Oslo, while Israel is not respecting them. They are respecting the agreement of Paris, which is condemning the economy of Palestinians in West Bank, but Israel is not respecting them. So in what way we can deal with Israel? Negotiating while Israel is getting settlements? This is not solution. The only solution is fight for your rights in the way you can, whether in a manifestation, despite of the killing of this minister, Ziad Abu Ain, recently by one soldier, and they freed them yesterday. You know, they let them free out of jail. He killed a minister of the authority.
Nothing surprising about that.
This is the way that you deal with it.
I'm sure it was an accident.
Yeah, like any other accident, Israel killing people.
This is a larger comment in the UN. Of course, the ineffectiveness of UN resolutions is well known in a variety of.
But TK, you're talking about international organizations
exactly what I'm
but
talking
all of these
about.
organizations are relatively weak. Even when we talk about the ICC,
I'm not talking.
that's a very
I'm not
weak
talking about
court.
NGOs and these sort of things, but more.
Well, the ICC is not an NGO.
No. I'm not talking about. But I'm talking beyond that about what the professor was talking about. Is it has to do with raising awareness amongst world populace. This is what was done with South Africa. When you bring people to be aware of the situation, this is when you began, particularly when U.S. educational institutions began to stand up and divest themselves of investments into South Africa. That was the death knell.
But the government is not changing its stance. Not the one in Washington, not the governments across Europe. We've had non-binding parliamentary votes after how many decades of occupation?
Let me point out some things that it is.
And I'm telling you one thing.
Yes.
South Africa did not go because the boycott of Britain or any other European country. Usually, and what happened at that time, when South Africa needed armaments and tanks, they used Britain used to sell it to Jordan, and then Jordan would bring it to South Africa. So this is boycott did not work properly. You know what works?
Go on.
What works was the struggle of the Namibian people, Angolan people, and more than 15 soldiers that came from Cuba and fight the South African government. That's the way that they had to give up. This plus the boycott of the international community against the apartheid policy. This is what works. If you are having international solidarity with the people of South Africa, you need again to fight against them.
There was an armed struggle going on as well. The question wasn't
Namibia, Angola, and Cuba. That's what helped together.
I think the main point of disagreement here is: do we go about armed struggle or do we take a diplomatic route? But what do you think should be next for the Palestinians?
Armed struggle is a wonderful device if it has as an end point that you're going to win the armed struggle. Now, if you're going to bring down decimation on your populace, your body politic, and this is going to end up as being what they called a Pyrrhic victory, a victory upon the funeral fire, then I'm not too certain how good it is. Again,
I'm not giving you my house, even if you kill me. It's my house. I still have the keys.
I'm not going to take your house, Professor.
If Israelis are taking our house, my house, Palestinian houses, and I have the right to defend myself.
Somebody whipped up the Palestinians to the point where 500,000 of them left during the Al-Nakba. Al-Husseini or others, they didn't stand their ground with the Israelis. They didn't defend their house. I wish they had. I wish they had not left Palestine. They conceded it to the Zionists. Now, something went wrong in 48 when declaration was declared and warfare broke out.
So you call occupation a conceding territory? Like Palestinians conceded the territory to Israel?
Someone whipped up fears with it.
It's a war against people who had no right to get a gun. When Palestine was under the authority
refugee around the Middle East, what did they think that was going to do in terms of protecting their home territory?
When the Palestinians were under the control of Britain, they did not allow them to have a knife, while they give the Israelis, the Zionists, every single arm they had in Palestine.
That's interesting, considering that the Zionists blew up about 300 Brits during the Mandate era in the King David Hotel. That's not true whatsoever. They tried to balance interests between the two sides. I've never heard anything about them exclusively arming the Israelis. Now, 300 British officers.
Okay, the point is they simply didn't do much to stop the occupation from moving ahead. There'll be closing arguments here. Where do we go from here? Your final thoughts then.
Well, I think that the international community should work in a realistic way. The Palestinian Authority should work in a realistic way. This is not the route that we need to take. We need to take a different approach to take advantage of the international solidarity, to take advantage of the consciousness that we have today against the apartheid applied by Israel. By the occupation of Israel. We should go in a different way. We should work hard to do this, despite of the $1 million that we lose in tax revenue in Israel, with Israel, that they will do it every time, and they will turn the situation upside down and say, this is the real conflict with the Palestinians, that we take $1 million, and despite of the $300 miserable that the United States is giving to the authority to pay the salaries. And they give $300 million in one hand, and the other hand they give $3 billion to the Israelis. So this is a hypocritical attitude. We should leave this there and go to the real people who have solidarity with Palestine and they who understand the apartheid policy of Israel against Palestinian people.
The Palestinians seem to be one of the few groups that the United States hasn't armed in the Middle East. Is between Israel, in Israel's case, you're right, it's an outright subsidy.
I disagree with you. They did arm Palestinian Authority security groups, and they did guide them, and they did told them how to do this, how to take strugglers and put them in jail and give them away to Israelis.
How to help maintain the occupation. Okay, gentlemen, on that note, I'm afraid that we're run out of time on this week's edition of the show. I want to thank you very much for a lively and very interesting discussion, both the political analyst Nabil Khalil and freelance journalist DK Malloy. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for watching. Don't forget that you can catch us again next week at the same time. Their friendly gesture there to finish it off. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you a lot.